Trying to think what else. Cooking, building, and growing things. Early on, at least. You also want to make sure that people can fight. Not that they have bonuses towards learning how to fight, but that they can fight. If they cannot fight because of some traits or background issues, early on that's going to be a pain in the butt to deal with threats and things that you'll run into. Okay, the three of you awaken your crypto-sleep sarcophagi to the sounds of sirens and ripping metal. You barely get to the escape pods before the ship is torn apart. Sometime later you land on the unknown Rimworld. Pieces of the shredded starship fall around you. Start making plans to survive. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, now that we're on the world, is I'm going to hit the space bar, and that's going to pause things. If you're on console, try to figure out what your pause button is. And then we're going to slowly zoom out, and we're going to look around at our map. Okay, so we paused, we've looked around at the map. What does that do for us? That lets us know where stuff is, and more importantly, it helps us to slowly determine where we want to build based off of the terrain affordances and other things. I'm probably going to build right here in the center where I started. Why? So that I'm not too close to any of the edges of the map. Everything will be equidistant away from me, more or less. And I won't have to travel far to get all of my stuff put into the storage building that we will be making. Speaking of the storage building that we will be making, I will go ahead and start preparing our colonists for actually working. The first thing I'm going to do is come into Work tab. Now, the standard priority listing is here. You can see that it's just green check marks. We don't have any children, we don't have many prisoners, so warden and childcare can be unchecked. Don't have any animals, so no handling is needed. We don't need hunting right now. We don't need growing right now, and we don't need mining right now. Cooking is also not necessary at this time. Construction will be. We'll allow Everlay to remain on plant cutting, and we'll turn off smithing, tailoring, art, and crafting for the moment. We'll also turn off genetics, research, fishing, and writing. Now, I prefer to utilize manual priorities mode, which is shown up here by clicking that. This will allow me to further delineate which tasks will always take priority over any others. Now, to do an entire column at once, you press and hold Shift if you're on keyboard, and left click, and that will change the priority up one category towards one. Using the manual priorities tab, priority 1s are done first, priority 4 is done last. It starts from the left, being high priority, and goes to the right, low priority. So any tasks that are at tier 1 will be done in order of left to right during task checking. What does that mean? That means that firefighting will always be done first, then patient, then doctor, then bed rest, because I've set them all to 1. Okay. Except for Larky and Callie, who do not have doctor checked at all. They will be skipped. They will go from firefight, patient to bed rest. Doctor won't even be considered. Now, basic. Basic is something I always recommend everybody do at high priority. What does basic do? Unskilled and easy tasks, release prisoners, and flick switches on machines. More in depth, flicking switches, releasing prisoners, opening containers, changing dryad types, and extracting skulls from corpses. That's what basic does. The importance of flicking switches is huge because if you designate a machine that you do not want to receive power from your power grid later on, you will have to wait until they go and flick the switch after you tell them to flick the switch off. So keep that in mind. Alright, construction is high for these two pawns. Plant cutting needs to be high for that one. I'm going to drop that down and tell them to haul over constructing. Hauling will be high, just like that, and cleaning will also be decently high. Alright, so their priorities are set there. The next thing I want to do is I want to hop over to scheduling. The standard schedule works, but my personal preference for scheduling looks a bit like this. Alright, let's do a quick breakdown of this. With this schedule, the schedule tells the colonists what they should be doing at any given time, and they will try to do it with some degree of success. The blue indicates time periods that they will try to go to sleep. The numbers indicate the hours of the day, from 0 to 23 hours. Now, your standard schedule has them sleep from 22 hours to 5. That's from dusk till dawn. And then they wake up, and then they will do whatever they please between hour 6 and hour 21. Which is all well and good. That means that they'll try to do recreation, they'll try to eat, they'll try to work, they'll try to do anything that needs to be done. The schedule I do here, however, is 2 4-hour blocks of sleep. One at 22 to 1, and one from 10 to 13. Why 2 4-hour blocks instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8? Instead of 1 8-hour block, it allows the sleep to be broken up into 2 separate periods of the day, which will allow their rest to remain mid to high all throughout the day and keep them fairly happy. They won't get drowsy and they won't get upset because they've been doing stuff all day and they want to go to bed. This also means that they can be put onto an emergency task more often without having any worry about them being upset because they're sleepy. Between 2 and 7 and 14 and 19, these are 2 6-hour periods where they are to do anything, including work-related stuff. They'll eat, they'll work, they'll move things around, they'll do stuff that they need to do, but they will be awake during those times. Why? That will be their most productive times of the day. That will allow them to get stuff done and still be able to eat and drink and do stuff that they need to do to keep them happy and to keep them sustained. And then 8 and 9 and 20 and 21 are recreation. Recreation is something that kind of speaks for itself. They play games, they do things to keep themselves happy and occupied. And I'm doing this right before they go to bed for 4 hours so that they will be happy when they wake up and they won't need recreation until just before they go back to bed. This will give them plenty of time to do whatever it is they need to do to make themselves full, happy, and ready to work the next shift. Now, that said, I usually put this on specifically so that they will be set up to do all of this kind of work all the time. Outfit management and other things under the Assign tab. We're going to set them to attack. If they get attacked by something, that is what happens when you set them to attack. They will respond back. Odds are if they're getting attacked by something, they're already being attacked, which is going to slow their movement and prevent them from getting away. They're probably going to get hurt anyways. So what I want them to do is I want them to engage in melee so that they can lock the target down and then have the other guys come down and assist. This will make dealing with threats far, far easier. Outfit management, we'll get to that. Food management restrictions, however, we're going to go right ahead and we're going to edit and change up the lavish food restriction and call it basic. So I just called it basic. I cleared all of the current things for it. Now we're going to go in and we're going to do manual prioritization. Allow rotten. No. Allow vegetarian food. Yes, that's fine. Allow food with appetizing meat. That's fine. Allowing food with human meat. No. We aren't a cannibal colony. Allow food with insect meat. No. We are not a colony that indulges in insect meat. So, we're going to go ahead to meals, and we are going to select simple meals. Our drug policy, we will also rename to basic from social. And we're going to turn all of this off. So why? Why have I done this? I don't want any of my colonists using anything that I don't want them to use, and anything that was checkmarked in this column here, they will use if they already have an established drug addiction for. I want them to only use drugs when I want them, how I want them to. Beer, for instance, every 5 days is fine. Usually when they're below, let's say 75% on the mood scale, and when they're below 75% recreation. What this means is if they're not fully happy, or if their recreation dips below a certain point, and it's been 5 days, they'll drink a beer. They then have to wait a 5-day period before they'll do another check and see, oh, hey, it's been 5 days, I can have another beer, but am I upset enough to need a beer? Am I low enough on recreation to where I need a beer? They'll do the check, and if it says yes or yes on either of these two, as long as it's been 5 days since they've had the last beer, they'll have some. Do we have beer? No, not yet, but that will be something we do cover later on. Now, what about other things that could improve their lives? We will go with Psych IT. Frequency, every 5 days, only if mood is below 75%, and recreation is below 75%. What does that mean? It means, like I said before, for the beer, if they've had a dose in the last 5 days, they won't use it. If it's been more than 5 days, then they move on to the next check. If If they meet the requirements for that, they'll have one. If they don't, then they move on to the next check. If they meet the requirements for that, you get the idea. Why is Psychite Tea on this list? Why is beer on this list? Why do I care? Psychite Tea has many effects. The least of which is that it does provide a sleep fall rate modifier and a pain modifier. Psychite Tea helps to keep you awake. It makes you a little happy. And it makes you more resistant to pain. It's very, very useful. Beer. What does beer do? Beer, let's see here. Beer just makes them happy. 17% recreation. It can also be used as a weapon in emergencies. Do I recommend it? Not really. If they don't have anything else, it's a good option. Alright. We've done that. What's next? Well, we're going to look over here. We're going to see what we have immediately available to us. There's a little bit of wood. Let's go ahead and unmark that so that we can then use the wood to start creating a structure. Well, for my first structure, I'm going to go to Orders tab, which, if you don't want to go all the way down here to your lower tab, what we can do is we can actually right-click if you're using keyboard and mouse, and that will bring up your Architect menu. So the same thing as me going down here and clicking this will bring up this, or right-clicking, assuming there's no object, like right beneath it, right-click and it just brings up the menu. And it will bring up the last tab that you accessed. So miscellaneous, miscellaneous, zone, zone, orders, orders. We want orders. Why do we want orders? Because we want to get access to this tool right here called the planning tool. The planning tool allows you to set a series of markers on the world based by the tile squares that things can reside in. Like, for instance, this packaged survival meal that I'm hovering over takes up a square on the floor, so to speak, or a square on the ground. So let's go ahead and do a 5 long by 5 tall, or 5 wide by 5 tall, or what have you, plan. We want this to be 25 or 5 by 5 squares internally. We're then going to go in here to walls. We're going to select wooden walls. Oh, hang on a second here. Okay. So we have some walls built around it. Since it's a 5 by 5, that gives us spacing, equidistant spacing for doors for this first building that we're making. And we can put doors north, south, east, and west, allowing our pawns to gain access to the building from any direction without having to walk all the way around to a specific entry point. Early on, this is really nice to be able to have because it is very movement efficient. Okay, now what am I going to do? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select stockpile zone. I'm going to set a stockpile zone down. What am I going to use the stockpile zone for? I'm going to use it so that they have a place to put all their weapons, equipment, and food indoors once they build the building around it. So we're going to go right ahead and select packaged survival meals. Then we're going to go up here, minimize that, weapons and apparel, and manufactured, and we're going to go to medicines. We're also going to enable advanced components to be stored here and components to be stored here. That should cover all of the items that we want stored in this storage area. As you can see, I could do one at a time like this all day, unforbidding the items which have been forbidden have this little red X. I can unforbid things manually all day like that. Or I can double click them to select all of them that I can see on screen at a time. Notice this one didn't get selected. So I can do this. And that'll grab as many of them as I can see on screen. Or, if I just want to unforbid everything, right click again, go to orders, and there's the allow tool right there. Right click on it, left click on unforbid all items, 34 will be affected. Now all the items on the map that were forbidden are now no longer forbidden. They'll go, they'll pick them up, they'll bring them back, they'll put them into their containing area. Alright, so that's the first storage building made for our little adventure. Well, what about for when the pawns need to sleep? I gotcha. We're going to build a 5x5. We're going to leave a square's worth of space for the walls for this other building. And then we're just going to go right ahead and install doors. Oh. Didn't make the wall right on that one. Alright. So that one's set up now. We're going to go ahead as well and put the sleeping spots in for our colonists. Now, 4 bedrooms. I actually do prefer... Actually, let's go ahead and do it that way, sideways, instead of up and down. I actually prefer the 5x5 for making bedrooms, regardless of whether it is a barracks or if it is individual rooms. And I'll show you why in a moment. The barracks style that I go with is usually done like this, primitively baseline. Like that. So there's 6 beds, head to foot, 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 and head to foot there, with a straight shot between the 2 doors that people can walk through. Now, I do have some space here, a 2x5 area open. That'll be for later on, when we start doing additional upgrades to the room, like dresser, drawers, and other things. But for now, this will work, and it will work well. We're going to unpause and we're going to let them start doing what they're going to do, which we do need to go ahead and designate some trees to be chopped down for additional wood, because they don't have enough to build both structures. And we're just going to unpause and let them go about their business. before I let them continue on, one thing that is important to note is that each of these pawns should be armed if possible. Now I'm going to go ahead and give this one the sniper rifle and this one the pistol that we started off with. And I'm also going to give Callie the plasteel knife since she has a 7 in melee combat, as well as she has bonuses towards learning melee combat more. Alright, let's go ahead and speed things up a bit. The big thing now is just waiting for them to finish up what they're doing. Which it will take some time. Especially because one of the pawns that should be doing construction work is also set to hauling, and the hauling is higher prioritized than the construction work. But that's okay, because we want to get this building done, but we also want to get the stuff inside that we want protected. Oh yes, before I forget, spacebar pauses, the 1 number key sets to normal speed, 2 sets to slightly increased speed, and 3 is Whoa Nelly, as fast as it can go. For speeding up time, that is. Alright, so they're still cutting down trees and doing their job and whatnot. Shouldn't be terribly long. Alright. Things are just proceeding along at a decent pace. They've got their sleeping quarters built. They have their first storage built. We will go ahead and get set up for another storage to be built. This storage, I'm actually going to branch off of the main storage building, like so. Alright. Now I'm going to go ahead and save.